Good evening, everybody. Welcome to the Agoura Hills City Council meeting. Please silence all cell phones and other electronic devices. If you wish to speak or submit a written comment, please complete a comment card for each item and submit to the City Clerk prior to the public comment portion of the item. I'm now calling this meeting to order. And we're going to begin with our land acknowledgement. The City of Agoura Hills acknowledges that we occupy land originally and still inhabited and cared for by the Chumash Nation. Descendants of Chumash still remain, and we honor and pay our respects to their elders and various groups that make up the past, present, and emerging as they continue their stewardship of our lands and waters. We have a responsibility and commitment to elevate the stories, culture, and community of the original inhabitants of the city of Agoura Hills. And we are grateful to have the opportunity to live and work on these ancestral lands. I will now call on Diego Ibanez for the Pledge of Allegiance. Thank you. I will defer to the City Clerk for the roll call vote.
Good evening. Councilmember Anderson?
Here.
Councilmember Anstead?
Here.
Councilmember Klein-Lopez? Mayor Pro Tem Wolf?
Present.
Mayor Sylvester?
Here.
Mayor Sylvester, you have a quorum with Councilmember Klein-Lopez absent.
Thank you. There was no closed session this evening, so there is no report. We'll now move on to the approval of the agenda. Will the maker of the motion and the second to approve the agenda state your names?
Mayor Pro Tem Wolf, I'll make a motion to approve the agenda.
City Councilman Chris Anstead seconds.
Thank you. I'll defer to the City Clerk for the roll call vote.
Councilmember Anderson?
Aye.
Councilmember Anstead?
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Wolf?
Aye.
Mayor Sylvester?
Aye.
Mayor Sylvester, you have approval 4-0.
Thank you. And now I'm happy to do the presentation for the business of the month. Thank you so much. So this evening we're honoring Fleet Feet. So I would like to call up Community Outreach Manager Sarah Grimmett, Operating Partner Daniel Lerma, and Store Manager Joe, is it Lysel? Lyle, sorry, I beg your pardon. Would you like to join me? Good, are you? Everybody welcome. So, I'm so excited to share our October 2025 Business of the Month, Fleet Feet in Agoura Hills. Fleet Feet is more than just a running store. They offer specialized fittings, training programs, a large selection of apparel and gear. Please note the apparel on my feet. I've lost my place. Let's see. Okay, and 100% satisfaction guaranteed, and I can vouch for that. What makes Fleet Feet stand out in our community is how they step up as partners to the city. They've been involved in the Raise Adobe Days run and many more of our local events, helping bring people together, encouraging health and fitness, and supporting our city's sense of community. So today, Fleet Street Agoura Hills, on behalf of the City of Agoura Hills, thank you for your commitment, your community spirit, and for being a valued partner with the city and the community. Congratulations on being Business of the Month. So who is going to take the mic next?
Awesome. I wasn't prepared to say anything, but we definitely appreciate the recognition of the reward, and we definitely love supporting the Raise Adobe Day run and supporting the community in general out here. So thank you for this acknowledgement and reward.
There you go. Anybody else like to say anything? No? Well, thank you for being here. I know it makes my life a lot easier. I know where to go to when I need shoes. Thank you very much. And we have to have a picture. Thank you. We're now moving on to Intergovernmental Special Purpose Committee and Departmental Reports. And I'm up first, so I'm going to give a report on the COG. Council of Governments, we met yesterday. So we had a presentation from an organization called Wildfire Solutions Coalition, and they're requesting all the cities in the COG to join them. They're a regional alliance of local governments, public safety agencies, community-based organizations, and environmental groups working collaboratively to develop and implement scalable, science-based strategies for wildfire risk reduction. They emphasize proactive measures, including community resilience planning, vegetation and fuel management, public education and outreach, infrastructure hardening, and equitable funding advocacy for fire-prone communities. And so we've been asked to go back to each city to see if we will agree to support them. At this point, I do want to say there's no money involved. It's just all the communities in the wildfire urban interface areas that would like to band together to make us stronger. So that's something that I would like us to discuss. I don't know, would that be an agendized item, City Manager? So if we could put that forward for the future. I thought it sounded great, and I think it's something that we're all concerned about. And the more of us that are joined together, the stronger our voice will be. We also had a presentation from Jackie Irwin, and she wanted me to remind everybody that the Safety Fair is going to be on November 1st at the Calabasas Community Center. She has been working with SCE to resolve problems of outages that are not public safety power shutoff events, particularly in Calabasas. They've been having quite a few of these recently. And she stressed that the public needs more information on the names and locations of circuits, and she would like SCE to work on bifurcating some of these circuits to reduce the number of residents that are affected by PSPS events. SCE rep was there, and she said they're going to be holding a town hall in Calabasas on November 20th on this issue of outages and infrastructure maintenance. And she also explained to us that one of the problems to getting all of their network undergrounded is the poles. They have to get permits to remove the poles and underground their circuits. But there are utilities, other companies, that use those poles for, like, cell towers or whatever. So there's a conflict now because they want to remove some of these poles, and now they're being told they can't. So that's something that needs to be coordinated, and Jackie Irwin is aware of this too. So I hope that probably will have to go to the state legislature to resolve that issue. Lindsay Horvath's going to be moving her Calabasas office, and it's going to be across the street from the sheriff's station. I think that will happen before the end of the year. And then Captain Dustin Carr from our Lost Hills Sheriff Station, unfortunately, says they are seeing a rise in hate incidents in our schools. And the J team is working with the school sites to help educate students, and they've been coordinating with the Museum of Tolerance for them to come and speak on the campuses. That's a sad thing, but they are working towards resolutions. And then lastly, there was a representative from the Calabasas landfill, Gwen Tantoko. She reported they're now down to just 2 to 4 loads of fire debris per day. And to date, they have received 243,700 tons of fire debris, but that is slowing down now. So that's my COG report. I'll go back to my script. Let's see, where did I get to? Lost my script. Where'd it go? Oh, here it is. No, don't mind. So, Santa Monica Mountains Conservancy Advisory Committee update.
Thank you, Mayor Sylvester. We had our Santa Monica Mountain Conservancy meeting last night. There were 4 things that we took action on that are relevant, well, 3 things that we took action on that are directly relevant to Agoura Hills, and a 4th that is not directly relevant to Agoura Hills, but it had so much public attention that I wanted to lift it up for everybody here. So starting with the things that had relevance to Agoura Hills, we approved a $400,000 grant to the the MRCA, Mountain Recreation Conservation Authority, to work with the LA County Fire Department to basically project manage the large grant that the Santa Monica Mountains Conservancy, had given to the fire department in a previous meeting. And all of this is Prop 4 money that is designed to help reduce the wildfire risk here, well, throughout Los Angeles County. I'm, of course, focused on reducing the wildfire risk here in the Conejo Valley and around Agoura Hills. And I was delighted to be able to support that, because our future plans for wildfire prevention and the implementation of that will depend heavily on LA County Fire. So I look forward to continuing the work with the MRCA and the LA County Fire Department to help make sure that we are doing all that we can and that we're getting the resources from these outside agencies to do all that we can to mitigate our wildfire risk. A second thing relevant to us is a $500,000 grant, again, to the MRCA for a tree assessment. Many of you, I'm sure, saw what happened, the unfortunate incident in King Gillette, where a tree had been rotting. Well, I won't go into actually any details about that. I'm sure you have seen the news about that. So there is a tree assessment, both to make sure that we are taking good care of our trees and mitigating any risks, and also for wildfire prevention. And then last but not least, and things directly relevant to us, was a resolution to give the executive director of the MRCA the authority on their own to close any trails when there is a red flag warning. Apparently there's an inconsistent practice among different agencies and different and different jurisdictions about what happens during a red flag warning. Our state parks and our national parks do not automatically close the trails, and the MRCA had not had a practice of closing the trails. There was a conversation about not wanting inconsistent rules along a trail, and Joe Edmonston gave us the example of, you can take a trail, there's such a patchwork that you can take one trail and be on like 3 or 4 different properties on that same trail. So you didn't want, we try as hard as we can to coordinate our responses. So this will be an uncoordinated response, in that MRCA will potentially be closing trails when there is a red flag warning, but the states might not and the national park may not. And there was a hope expressed in the Conservancy meeting that perhaps we could be leading the way, and that we could create some coordination by MRCA closing and then having conversations with our state parks and our national parks to close too, so that as you are walking along a trail, you are getting consistent regulations, and so that when we have these red flag warnings, and they are red flag warnings that potentially are a risk to somebody on the trail, that we close these trails to then help protect life and safety. And then last but not least, something not directly relevant to us, but there is a proposed gondola, many of you may have heard about this, going from Union Station up to Dodger Stadium. And we had robust community participation asking the MRCA to take a stand against that, or to make a comment. There is an open comment period right now for one of the agencies that is taking a look at approving this gondola, which would move it forward to the next step in other agencies. MRCA has not submitted a comment. Many showed up last night to say, please do submit. Sorry, was it last night? Monday night, today is Wednesday, sorry. Many folks showed up on Monday night to say, please submit a comment. And we, the Santa Monica Mountain Conservancy, are asking the Attorney General if that is something that we are required to do, and if we are required to do, we absolutely will. And if we are not, it will be something that we agendize to then take a vote on whether we should make a comment on it. And that's my report.
And could you explain why people are opposed to it?
Absolutely. We had a number of folks from the area, from Olivera Street, and then also from Chinatown and the community, and they feel that this gondola is going to have a detrimental impact on their communities.
That's because it's going to go directly over their heads. Yes, thank you. Okay, Are there any reports from any other council members? No? Lovely. Are there any reports from staff? Seeing none, we now move on to public comments. This section is reserved for persons wishing to speak on items that are not listed on the agenda, that are under the subject matter jurisdiction of the City Council. If you have something to distribute to the City Council, please do not approach the dais. Hand your item to the City Clerk and she will distribute it to us on your behalf. Public testimony is limited to 3 minutes per speaker, and a speaker's time may not be transferred to another speaker. Persons addressing the City Council shall not engage in disorderly conduct that disrupts or otherwise impedes the orderly conduct of the meeting. I will now defer to the City Clerk.
Thank you. We did not receive any written correspondence. We do have speakers this evening. Josh Gray, followed by Emily Sharp.
Welcome. You will have 3 minutes to speak, ending when the red light appears on the podium. Please adjust the microphone and begin.
Thank you, Mayor Sylvester and City Council. I'm Josh Gray, here with a few updates from the Conejo Chamber and the Tourism Districts. The Chamber had its Spotlight Mixer in September at Crawford Social, and the latest Spotlight Breakfast on Technology and Innovation at the Sheraton on September 5th, both with great success, and thank you to all those that attended these recent events. Leadership Conejo's next cohort started last month next door in the community room. Had its second session on October 10th at CLU and with Many Mansions with a nonprofit panel. And it'll have its third session in November with Conejo Unified and Las Virgenes Water District. The cohort has an overall class size of 32 participants, including Stephanie Pozos from the city. And I'd also like to just thank again the city for being a sponsor of the Leadership Conejo program. On October 28th, our next legislative roundtable will be having guest speaker Philip Law from SCAG. He is the Deputy Planning Director to discuss Connect SoCal, the regional transportation plan and sustainable community strategies. And then on November 25th, we'll be having a special session of Legislative Roundtable to host Assemblymember Jackie Irwin talk about 2025 legislative updates from the state, as well as what 2026 will look like. On November 7th, the Chamber will have its next Spotlight Breakfast on healthcare and education at the Sheraton. And then on tourism, the RevPAR numbers continue to see high levels of variance throughout 2025. That's related to the fires, tariffs impacting international travel, as well as ICE raids in the community have all played a different role in a lot of up and down and a lot of that variance. But we did have some recent analysis from Oxford Economics for 2026 that did note some remarkably resilient factors for Conejo Valley compared to a lot of our neighbors, and that they did predict some modest growth for next year's financials, which we did appreciate, and we do hope to continue to see some resiliency there. Sorry, I lost my place. For PR efforts, we did have a press release on the new website that saw a total of 163 pickups by media outlets for a total potential audience size of 66.2 million. On socials, we continue to see an increase in follower growth across all platforms and had 18 collaboration posts in August and 17 in September with a combined 310,000 views. The new tourism website, I will wrap it. The new tourism website has seen great year-over-year growth, month-over-month growth, and we did just launch our new creative, the beer, wine, and cocktail map for the Conejo Valley. You can see a sneak peek of it on our website right now. We haven't formally announced it. And then other than that, our November 11th will be our annual TID retreat. That is a public meeting, and any of you are welcome to come. And I'd just like to thank Mary for showing up to a lot of our recent meetings. Thank you all. If you have any questions, otherwise, thank you.
Thank you so much. We appreciate the partnership.
Our next speaker is Emily Sharp, followed by Ed Frank.
Hello. Hello, my name's Emily Scharf. I've never done this before, so thank you guys for having me. I am a resident of Agoura. I live in the Forest Cove Park neighborhood. We've had a lot of issues lately with e-bikes. I know that's on the agenda for later this evening, but I wanted to bring it up. I have a 2.5-year-old, and we were most recently walking the walking path on the Forest Cove Park area. It's a little bit of a twisty path, and a group of e-bikes came and almost ran over my son, which was very scary. He is 2. And when we got to the park, there was a police officer there, and I went to speak with him and just show concern and ask if there was anything that could be done. And he was very dismissive and very rude, and he said there was nothing he could do. There was no way for them to identify the people on the e-bikes, and there was nothing to be done except come to a meeting. So here I am at a meeting expressing my concern. And I've seen other instances in our neighborhood, in Agoura, and Westlake as a whole. So I'm just bringing it up as a concerned mother. Thank you so much.
Thank you. I hope you're going to stay for when we have the discussion.
Yes.
Is the other speaker about e-bikes? Because we should wait and do that when it's the agendized item.
Mr. Frank, is it about e-bikes? Okay, we will
So
wait.
Can we wait, and when we can't answer here, but we can when we have a discussion. Okay.
Thank you.
I hope you'll stay, Emily. Do we have any further speakers?
No further comments.
Thank you so much. We're now moving on to the council consent calendar. This section is reserved for persons wishing to speak on items on the consent calendar. I will now defer to the city clerk.
We did not receive any written correspondence, nor did we have any speaker cards.
Thank you. Are there any questions from the city council on the consent calendar? Seeing none, I will now call for a motion and a second to adopt the consent calendar.
City Councilman Chris Anstead makes a motion to approve the consent calendar.
Mayor Pro Tem Wolf, I will second.
Thank you. I'll defer to the city clerk for the roll call vote.
Councilmember Anderson?
Aye.
Councilmember Anstead?
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Wolf?
Aye.
Mayor Sylvester?
Aye.
Mayor Sylvester, you have approval 4-0.
Thank you. I just want to ask the city manager something. Do any of our council members object if we move the e-bike discussion up? Is that fine, since we have members of the public here? All right. So we will jump ahead and then we will come back. So do we have are you ready? Sorry, I sprung that one on you. Is it, okay, thank you. So we're going to jump ahead to item number 11, which is the discussion regarding e-bicycle rules and regulations. I will now defer to Director of Public Works, City Engineer Charmaine Yambao for the staff presentation.
I'm going to have Amy start it first.
Yes, thank you.
And then I'll join.
Thank you, Mayor Sylvester. Good evening, City Council. Amy Brink, Director of Community Services. I'm going to go ahead and kick off the presentation. While we get settled, I just want to say during this year's budget process, the City Council identified e-bike rules and regulations review as a goal. There's been a growing concern over the use of e-bikes, motorized scooters, and bicycles in the community. Residents are witnessing and reporting unsafe use and reckless behavior from individuals utilizing different forms of electric bicycles on city streets, sidewalks, and in city parks. This evening, your city staff team includes Charmaine Yambao, Director of Public Works, Matt Stewart, Traffic Engineer with Kimley Horn, and we have a very comprehensive and robust presentation that has been vetted through the Community Services Subcommittee that we would like to present to you tonight. So if you look, this agenda for the discussion includes all of these points. We're going to talk about what are e-bikes, what are the existing challenges, who, what, when, where with e-bikes, what are our existing and new regulations, what are our neighboring jurisdictions doing and how are they approaching the issues with e-bikes. We also are going to talk a little bit about our partners, their support and feedback. We did take it to the Community Services Subcommittee a couple of weeks ago. We're going to provide you with that feedback as well. Then we are going to provide the city councils with options for both sidewalks and park regulations. And then we will follow up with education and enforcement, and finally offer a recommendation and ask for your feedback on the recommendation. But while we get started on the topic, what about e-bikes? We all know, and coming from the Director of Recreation, we all know that e-bikes, there are some positive aspects of e-bikes. There's a recreational use. Some of the older folks, older people who use them can get places, I shouldn't say older people, everybody gets to places faster and easier. We all use them, right? You can tackle challenging terrain. The rides are more accessible to a wider range of people. They create a lot of independence for young riders, and there's a lot of enjoyment by reducing fatigue, which increases your range and your accessibility. So we know that there are some benefits of bicycles and e-bikes specifically. But we also know that the popularity of e-bikes, particularly in this area, have surged since the pandemic. Sales have gone up, the technology has improved those bikes, and there's been an increase for a desire for convenient and very eco-friendly transportation. There's a very underlying component to all of that. And we're seeing people of all ages using them. So with e-bikes, the existing challenges that the city has, though, is balancing the desire for recreational use with public safety. Key points to consider while we go through this discussion are lack of training, especially amongst young riders, the need for education and regulation, looking at the infrastructure and policy, how to integrate e-bikes into our existing transportation framework, calls for regulatory challenges to be addressed on public roads, especially for the younger riders. And then we do have a lot of residents concerned about unsafe riding on city streets, and as you heard a few minutes ago, unsafe riding in city parks. So with that, I'm going to actually turn it over to our Director of Public Works. Actually, I'm going to actually start our traffic engineer, Matt Stewart, will kick us off to talk about e-bikes and the different types of classes that exist. So Matt.
Thanks, Amy. So yeah, over the last several years, there's been a proliferation of different types of devices. So just so we're all on the same page, I wanted to show some images of the whole range from regular acoustic bikes through e-bikes to mopeds and motorized bicycles, and then motorized scooters and e-scooters. And really all of these are in the city, used by different people. They have different rules and regulations. But the conversation today is focused on e-bikes, shown in green on the left there. And they're class 1, 2, and 3. We won't go too into the weeds, but the discussion overall will be focused on e-bikes. So just some reminders about bikes and e-bikes and what the current law says from the California Vehicle Code, the CVC. So bikes and e-bikes can ride on sidewalks, in bikeways on streets, so class 2 bike lanes, or shared roadways with the sharrows, or in regular travel lanes. They are subject to all provisions applicable to drivers. So the CVC says anyone who rides a bicycle upon a highway in willful or wanton disregard for the safety of persons or property is guilty of reckless driving. The next one, motorized scooters specifically shall not be operated on sidewalks. And then lastly, so drivers, which refers to someone driving a moped or a car or a bike, are allowed to use or cross over the sidewalk, but when you do, you have to yield the right of way to any pedestrian. And bikes are not specifically banned from sidewalks. So then a couple codes specifically related to bikes and e-bikes. It's the section of the CVC starting with 21-200. These two are just the key ones. So 21-206 states that cities may regulate bikes on sidewalks, bikes or e-bikes. And then 21-207.5 gives the city the permission to regulate bikes and or e-bikes on trails, bike paths, and in parks. And then while the city has been doing this review, we've heard from some residents about some recent legislation, so we just wanted to share these with you. We didn't present these to the subcommittee a few weeks ago, but we're presenting the summary now. So AB 875, it's fairly limited in scope, but it just expands the ability for peace officers to confiscate class 3 e-bikes if it's operated by someone under 16. And then the second one, peace officers can confiscate motorized cycles. So if essentially if they're beyond a class 1, 2, and 3 e-bike, if they're too fast, if they've been modified somehow, then they can be confiscated. And then they will be released 48 hours if fines are paid. And then the second bill, SB 586, we've heard from members of the community. This one's actually not related at all to e-bikes. It's a different type of device called an electric motorcycle, which are not allowed to be used on streets at all. So if those are seen on streets, they would be ticketed. And I'll hand it off to Charmaine to discuss the city's existing regulations.
Okay, now it's my turn. The city does have some existing city municipal code related to bikes, and not necessarily to e-bikes, but to bikes. We have code section 3206, and this is no person shall operate or use any bicycle on a sidewalk, pedestrian walkway, or parking area within a shopping center, shopping district, or business district. We also have section 4900, which says no person shall drive a motor vehicle in any park at a rate of a speed greater than what is reasonable and prudent, or drive any motor vehicle in any park in willful or wanton disregard for the safety of others. I do want to stress that the motor vehicle is defined as a vehicle which is self-propelled, including but not limited to automobiles, trucks, motorcycles, golf carts, motorized bicycles, mopeds, and motor-driven cycles. And I do want to note the code does not currently include bikes or e-bikes. So it needs to be updated. E-bikes is not a new concern. Many agencies up and down the state are dealing with the issues that surround e-bikes. And on this slide, we want to share the approaches of our neighboring cities, which range from soft to hard approaches of regulations. At the top is Oak Park. It's Oak Park's in Ventura County, does not allow riding on the sidewalk in business areas or where signs say no riding. Next, we have Westlake Village, who's recently passed a new regulations on banning e-bikes and scooters from all sidewalks, parks, trails, fields, and drainage basins. We have the city of Calabasas. South of us, e-bikes are permitted only on designated roads and parking areas in city parks. They are not allowed on trails or turf, and there are no restrictions on sidewalks or designated bike facilities. And last, we have Thousand Oaks that allows people to ride bicycles on sidewalks as long as they yield to pedestrians and the sidewalk has not been posted with signs that prohibit it. Any regulation of e-bikes will have a community-wide effect. So staff met with both Las Virgenes Unified School District and the Lost Hills Sheriff Station. Both the district and the sheriff are supportive of the city's efforts and willing partners on dealing with the issues of e-bikes. But let's get down to what they've said. Las Virgenes Unified School District, they support any education and incentive programs. In fact, they even provide I think it's the middle school, they have an education program that they have to sign, and then they can ride and park their bike on campus. They're not able, although they're not able to provide additional resources, they do recognize that bike or e-bikes are critical modes of transportation for students, so they do want to help and educate students about safe riding. The Lost Hills Sheriff Station provided the following feedback. They remain focused on educating community on different classes of e-bikes and electric motorcycles. They're focused on educating the community on what is required to use e-bikes and electric motorcycles, such as a helmet. They educate the community on basic traffic laws and surrounding the use of e-bikes. And they did provide feedback that the city could better define what unsafe use is in the municipal code. And I'll hand it back to Amy.
Thank you, Charmaine. So as I mentioned, we met with the Community Services Subcommittee back on October 6th, and here's some of the feedback that we received from Mayor Sylvester and Councilmember Anstead. While we recognize the e-bikes are useful for both recreation and transportation mobility, the city has been implementing policies and infrastructure to encourage alternative transportation, such as biking. Should consider new policies that regulate but not discourage biking. They also wanted us to provide the feedback that when considering potential banning of e-bike riding on sidewalks, the use of sidewalks to briefly access businesses or parks from the street should be allowed. Consider potential penalties and enforcement in coordination with the Lost Hills Sheriff Station. And finally, increase signs of new city regulations in the parks with a robust outreach of new regulations in the community, particularly in the schools. So I'm going to actually turn it back over to Charmaine so she can outline the options for regulations on both sidewalks and in the city parks.
So after conducting our research, collaborating with our partners, and considering neighboring jurisdictions, and the feedback from the Community Services Subcommittee, staff is here to present the following options. First up is the e-bikes on sidewalks, and then we'll cover on parks. The options that we are providing range from a very soft option to a hard stance. So this slide is for sidewalks. Option 1, no changes to the municipal code. We would rely on existing CVC requirements. We would focus on education campaign and enforcement of existing CVC requirements. Option 2 is to modify the municipal code to reinforce the CVC. Prohibition of reckless riding. That means no person shall ride an electric vehicle in an unsafe manner. Reinforcement of requirements to yield to pedestrians, which is actually currently mandated by the CVC. Bicycles may be ridden on sidewalks, but at a speed not to exceed 5 miles per hour. And define what constitutes unsafe riding behavior in any public area. Option 3 modifies the municipal code to prohibit e-bikes from sidewalks. This, I do want to point out that this is an option that's recommended by the Community Services Subcommittee. And this would be the prohibition of riding Class 1, Class 2, and Class 3 e-bikes from all city sidewalks. E-bikes only allowed on street facilities and bike lanes. Next are the options for regulation of e-bikes in parks. Again, options range from a soft stance to a hard. First up, we have option 1, which is no change to the municipal code. We would focus on education enforcement, just like we did for the sidewalks. Option 2 is to modify the municipal code to add e-bikes to the definition. No person shall drive a motor vehicle in any park at a rate of speed greater than what is reasonable and prudent, or drive any motor vehicle in any park in willful or wanton disregard for the safety of others. Motor vehicle means a vehicle which is self-propelled, including but not limited to automobiles, trucks, motorcycles, golf carts, electric bicycles are now included, motorized bicycles, mopeds, and motor-driven cycles. And we would provide a definition of what constitutes unsafe riding behavior in any public area. And last is option 3, modifying the municipal code to prohibit e-bikes in parks. This is also the option that the Community Services Subcommittee recommends. This means prohibiting e-bikes from non-roadway areas in the parks, but allows riding of e-bikes on the driveway and parking lots to access the park. And I'll hand it back to Amy.
So the two options that were just presented to the City Council for consideration would also align with our efforts that would continue surrounding education, mainly starting with public outreach. City staff will continue to engage in public education and outreach. Some of those examples included attending school PFC, PFA meetings to meet with parents and school staff to make sure that everybody understands what the rules and regulations are. We offer up hosting educational workshops for parents, partner with the Lost Hills Sheriff Station on these. We could also look at running a bicycle safety campaign. We could focus on information on unsafe driving and riding, and unsafe driving and riding along with the new traffic laws. I think there's a lot of, not necessarily misinformation, but not paying attention to what traffic laws are when we see e-bicycles riding up and down middles of roads and going in the wrong way of traffic. So focusing on unsafe driving and traffic laws would be a priority for us. And we would also look at doing a social media campaign surrounding all of these topics that we're talking about. Some alternative education options, and when we present these options for education that include public outreach and alternative education options. They are what will lean into anything new that we modify or change with respect to our rules and regulations. But some ideas that got tossed around at the subcommittee level included offering student safety courses. They would be district-approved safety classes that are offered to students to receive a bicycle permit. Permit requirement could be applicable to all bikes or just e-bikes. Bike permits then could be revoked for unsafe bike behavior. Let me be clear, though, these are just ideas that we kicked around in the subcommittee. We have not officially approached the school district about it. So if you are interested in it, we could certainly chat with them about it. But the idea would be that there are alternative education options when it comes to coordinating and cooperating with the schools on the education aspect of it. And then enforcement, because we know that enforcement is probably the biggest piece of the issues that we are encountering. And enforcement's got three pieces to it. Signage is one way of enforcing rules and regulations and use. We do recommend, or we've talked about, increased signage in public parks, updating signs, the park rule signs to include e-bikes specifically on sidewalks the increased signage in public parks would include updating that e-bikes are prohibited and the use, the safe use, further defining what unsafe use would be. Updating signs to include e-bikes on sidewalks is prohibited. So we would not be able to put signage along sidewalks saying that e-bikes are prohibited. The next layer of enforcement would include the Lost Hills Sheriff Station, because that's where we would manage traffic and public sidewalks. So cities obviously rely on law enforcement officers to enforce the city code and issue citations. So we would work with them directly on, implementing more enforcement when it comes to the traffic rules and regulations and those bikes that are subject to the CVC. And then obviously if they're riding on sidewalks. As for parks, where you would see the enforcement would be more from the city. It would be a code enforcement, because we would change the municipal code to include not riding bikes in the park, so we would have to tap into our code enforcement, our community development, and the code enforcement officer to help manage that aspect of it. I will say that, currently the code enforcement officer is really busy, so we would probably have to look at some kind of outside contract code enforcement where we would have to bring somebody in to assist with regulating the municipal code and the activity in the parks. So traffic, public sidewalks, we would work with Lost Hills Sheriff Station to beef up or increase that enforcement. With regulating parks, we would look more internally to, like I said, contract code enforcement or potential, private security, something that can help us actually get in there and enforce what's happening in the parks. So I think we've come to the end of our presentation. I'll look at Charmaine or Matt if there's anything else we want to add. At this point, we would respectfully recommend that the City Council provide feedback and direction on the e-bike options presented, and we are available for questions.
Thank you very much. It was an excellent presentation. Before we move on to public comment, does any council member have any questions of staff? I know Chris and I have asked all our questions.
I do actually, just a couple, and I agree, excellent presentation. Thank you for bringing it up. It is certainly an issue that we have been hearing a whole lot about. So one, and I feel silly because I feel like I just didn't understand something. Charmaine, can you walk me through that Agoura Hills Municipal Code, Section 3206? I thought I understood that to say that we already are prohibiting bikes on sidewalks. I know I'm misunderstanding that somehow.
It does prohibit bicycles on sidewalks and pedestrian walkways, but in a shopping center or a shopping district.
Oh.
Not the public sidewalk.
I see.
Yes.
Then just to clarify that within a shopping center or shopping district or business district covers all of that. So we are only currently prohibiting bikes within shopping centers, districts, or business districts. Got it. Okay.
That is correct.
I knew I was missing something. And this might, well, This is a question. So in option 2, there are 3 things going on with this. So let me go back to the sheriff's recommendations were to better define unsafe usage. And then I'm seeing in option 2 for both the sidewalks and the parks, option 2 says further define what constitutes unsafe driving. But that option 3 just prohibits the riding of e-bikes on sidewalks. And is that because if we prohibit it, we're obviating the need to define unsafe driving because there won't be any driving at all? Is the idea?
That's a great question. I would, actually thinking about that, I think it would be probably prudent to provide an unsafe riding definition because it is in the municipal code, just to have it, because that was a comment from the sheriff's station. So we could do both. But the prohibiting of the bikes from sidewalks and parks, you don't really need to have the unsafe riding definition, but it doesn't preclude not having it there because unsafe riding could be on the street, could be in the bike lanes. So, I mean, I think it's useful.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I think that's a good thing that you pointed that out. Thank you.
Thank you. Those were all my questions.
Thank you. Councilmember Wolf.
Yeah, so this might be a generalization, but if we go forward, the council, on riding bikes in e-bikes in parks, and if we go forward with option 3, does that mean that the city is responsible for all enforcement and there's no Lost Hills involvement? I'm not clear on what the involvement of Lost Hills is in our parks.
So Lost Hills Sheriff Station can enforce it in the park if it's in our municipal code. Much like other things, there are other things in our municipal code, and I might, if I've got Robbie at the deck up here, I might have him comment. If it's in the municipal code, they can enforce it if they have to. I think that if they're on, I think the overwhelming amount of e-bikes out there, it might not be a priority for them. And I don't know if Robbie wants to jump in.
Yeah, I would say that they definitely can, but a lot of the times the sheriff defers to us on matters either on private property or on city property. So
And thank you. So in that case, the city would have some enforcement teeth if we go with option 3 in parks?
Yes, I mean, it gives everybody more teeth to say that they're not allowed in parks, absolutely. And we have been, just for the council's information, we have our public safety liaison officer, JT Manuel. He has been spending a lot of time in the parks talking to these kids, and he's actually probably deterred and stopped a lot of these kids from, it could be a lot worse. So he has spent a lot of time out there talking with them. So we could continue to utilize him for that. But yes, if it was altered in the municipal code, it would give us more teeth to enforce.
Thank you. That's very clear. And I don't know if this is in the scope of what we're talking about tonight, but what would the enforcement look like? And if that's not something we should be talking about now,
Yeah, go.
Great question. We actually don't have all the details. It's really today want to know, your feedback, the options, and then we can come back at a later date to have a little bit more.
so this would be kind of like the first step to figuring out what the process would look like of what type of, I don't know, fines, fees, penalties we would be issuing.
That is correct.
Okay. Thank you.
Councilmember Anstead.
I have one question. Because of AB 875, which you brought up earlier, which gives the police the ability to confiscate a level 3 bicycle for kids that are under 16 years old. Does that mean that for kids that are under 16 years old, is it against the law for them to have a class 3 bicycle or e-bike?
Yeah, it's against the law for them to ride a class 3 e-bike if they're under 16.
Thank you. That's good clarity. I appreciate it.
But I'd also like to clarify, as a question, Class 1 and 2 bikes have been found to have been tampered with so that they can perform like a Class 3. Am I correct?
You're correct, and AB 875 also gets into that. So if any e-bike has been modified to be beyond class 1, 2, and 3, it can also be confiscated.
Thank you. And so if we have strict regulations, that is going to make it easier for the sheriff's department because there is no leeway. I mean, if we ban them from certain areas in the city, then it's very clear that if they see somebody that's violating that, they can step in rather than saying there's nothing we can do. And I also like to stress that this does not preclude anybody from getting off their bicycle and pushing it through the park to reach the other side of the park. So you can push your bicycle, you just can't ride it. Thanks.
What the bill is AB, what was it? AB 875. So that includes all the electric dirt bikes that we see, like the Sarons. So that's already considered not legal for anyone under 16 to ride.
I'm not familiar with that manufacturer, but if there's a lot of bikes that are not within class 1, 2, and 3 e-bikes, and then they might start to fall into the motorized bicycle category, which requires a driver's license, or a dirt bike, which is a whole separate category. So AB 875 gets into it if it may have originally been an e-bike, but then was modified to no longer fit the e-bike requirements.
Okay, thank you. And then I have one more question. There might not be an answer to this, but it's just kind of through conversations. Is the sheriff's department aware of all these classes, or do they know, the officers on duty, what the classes are?
So that's a great question, Mayor Pro Tem Wolf. There was a copy of the document that the Lost Hill Sheriff Station put out, included in your staff report, of the different classes. And that is a chart that is used by multiple counties. So it's out there. They are very aware what these different classes are. And Charmaine and I were just kind of sidebarring to your point. When you see a bike, they have to actually stop it, look at it. Has it been modified? What tests the speed? It's very challenging for them. But they've done it, and they have confiscated a lot of bikes. They've impounded a lot of bikes, but it does take a lot more work when you have to get in and look at them up close. But they are aware of it, and the deputies are aware of it.
Great. Thank you so much for thoroughly answering those questions. I really appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions from council? Okay, I will now defer to the city clerk for the public comments. I know, Emily, you spoke before. Did you want to add anything more now that you've heard the discussion? No. Okay.
Thank you. Ed Frank?
Welcome. You have 3 minutes to speak, ending when the red light appears on the podium.
The Academy Awards. Right. Yeah. Well, thank you. Good evening. Appreciate the opportunity to speak in front of you. I'm Ed Frank. My wife and I were both retirees. My wife just retired from the teaching at Sumac Elementary for more than 30 years. We've been in the neighborhood for many years. And we walk by Forest Cove Park and Trail Creek, and the number of e-bikes are unbelievable. These kids are not out there riding back and forth to school. They're causing trouble. They're coming down at us, going down Reyes Adobe towards from Thousand Oaks Boulevard on the sidewalk, pulling right up to us. You'll see one of the pictures I have there. Kids like 11 years old, 12 years old. After school, these kids are out there to get in trouble. They're cursing, they're nasty. What are you going to do about it? You can't touch me, F you. These are all the things that they have said. So we could put up all the rules, and I'm glad to see that the city council is doing something here, but it's got to be enforced and it's got to have teeth. There's a second picture there of about 8 kids riding down Trail Creek Road at about 5 o'clock in the afternoon. There were cars coming up the street. They had to pull over because these kids, and you see one of them's doing wheelies. These are not kids looking to go to school, so I would encourage you not to sugarcoat this, as these are just kids who need to have better modes of transportation to get to school. These are troublemakers. I've called the police a number of times. I've talked to dispatch. They're too busy. They can't get there. And by the time they get there, these kids are going 25, 30 miles an hour. They're gone. They're cutting through the park, they're getting in the way of the Little League games, they're getting in the way of the soccer practices, they're getting in the way of moms with kids, people walking their dogs. They're little hooligans, and it's a subset. You can't paint everybody with the same brush, but I would encourage you not to look at it so far back that you don't focus on the problems that we have. And it's taken what used to be a very nice, wonderful community, Agoura Hills, and it's transformed it in a negative way. And my wife and I, we want to just go for a walk in the afternoon, and you can't. You got to watch out. These kids are up and off the sidewalks to attack, to sort of brush by us and be nasty, and you can't touch me. What are you going to do? I mean, it's not one time. I'm here because it's reached a point where I just don't know where else to go, right? I've reached out to Lost Hills. We've corresponded with the mayor a few times. I figured I'd bring in some photographs, but I would hope that you take what I'm saying as a community member to heart and realize that sometimes it's not just what you say, it's what you do. You got to be able to back this up. I see I'm out of time. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your input. Jay, did you want to say anything? No, we know how you feel. Okay. Does any council member have any further questions? No, seeing none. So now we'd like to have your feedback. Who would like? Do you want to start, Councilmember Anstead?
Sure. So, I mean, the main thing on this, where I want to start from, I guess, on this is just for the community and everybody knowing, I am an e-biker. I am an e-biker. I have a Class 1 e-bike for mountain biking. I use it in the trails that we're allowed to use it on in the mountains. And so I totally understand what we're dealing with here. In addition to being an owner of an e-bike, I also, before the meeting, one of the regular places that I go is Serious Cycling here in Agoura Hills. And I talked to the manager there about this situation, and I was a little surprised actually at how much he was on board with the fact that he wanted these things regulated. He cannot believe that he sees parents bring in for their 14-year-old daughter or son these Class 3 e-bikes that can go 30 miles an hour, and in some cases they're asking him to try to modify the bikes to make them faster, and they won't do that. And he's just shocked at how they're using these e-bikes on the sidewalks and how fast they're going on the sidewalks. And so I got a very good education from talking to him about what he sees from the local residents that are buying these e-bikes, and also the fact that he's concerned for the safety of the individuals that are riding these, because he has seen numerous and heard of numerous incidents already of people on fire roads or other situations where they have these unregulated, where they've modified the motors and made them even faster than the 28 miles an hour, which is what a Class 3 can go up to, and made it even faster than that, like up to 40 miles an hour. So I think that these can be very dangerous. I actually, even though I own an e-bike, I was not aware of this law on AB 875 until actually talking to him. He's the first one that told me about it, about the fact that he's tried to tell parents that it's against the law for them to have somebody that's under 16 to be riding these Class 3 bikes, but they won't listen. They won't listen to him. And so I think it's great that we're trying to address this issue. I think that one of the things I want to state on the record is I want parents to listen to us, or to me at least here at this meeting, that if you are buying something for your daughter or son and they're under 16 years old, you need to know the difference between a Class 1 bike, which is a pedal assist that goes only 20 miles an hour, compared to a full throttle Class 3 bike that goes up to 30 miles an hour. And there's a big difference, and if you buy one of these Class 3 full throttle bikes, they can be confiscated from the sheriff's department. So we want to make sure that parents are aware of that situation going forward. And so one of the things for me about this is why in the subcommittee meeting, I had a little hesitancy. I definitely knew that we can get them off the sidewalks and get them on the street, just like a regular bicycles on our bike lanes. And that's why we've invested in the city of Agoura Hills. We've already invested millions of dollars to try to upgrade our roads with the green markings to try to make sure people are aware of that we're sharing the road with the bicyclist. And the same thing applies for the e-bicyclist, that they can ride on the roads, on the side of the road that's marked for the bicycle lanes. And so we need to pull them off the sidewalks because we have a lot of residents that are walking on the sidewalks and they want to feel safe. And these e-bikes don't make a lot of noise. So if you have an e-bike come up behind you, you won't even know it. It can be right on top of you in seconds. And so we want to make sure that we have safe sidewalks in our city. So completely comfortable making the decision to ban them on the sidewalks. And then the city parks, I was a little hesitant initially on the parks, on banning them, but I think one of the things to know is that we have smaller parks here in the city of Agoura. This isn't banning them from all the trails and all that in the mountains. It's only in our local city parks, which are smaller. And so you don't need an e-bike, riding an e-bike over 20 miles an hour in our local parks. So I'm completely comfortable also banning the e-bikes from our local city parks as well. So one of the things I want to leave or end with is that after talking to the manager at Series Cycling, he is completely comfortable volunteering to help educate if we decide we want to implement a program with the high school and all that going. So he had volunteered to do that. So I think those are my feelings, and be glad to listen to the other comments from the city council.
Thank you so much, and I'm glad we have someone that's willing to work with us. That's great. Councilmember Anderson.
So first, I want to thank Ed and Emily for coming out and letting us know how you're showing up at your city council and letting us know. That's fantastic, and it is very, very helpful to us to have you here, and we appreciate the time and effort that you have put into doing this. There is not a question for me of where I'm going with this. It's option 3. I too am in that Forest Cove area, and I too have seen these e-bikes in our parks, and it is not okay. You know, it is not okay. The speed at which they're riding, what is happening on those sidewalks. There are lots of small kids. There are lots of dogs. We got a lot of dog walkers. And it's not okay to have them on the sidewalks either. So I wish this didn't have to be something, but it is. And these things weren't a thing. Like when my pumpkins were little, there was no such thing. Well, maybe I guess there was such a thing as an e-bike, but it wasn't a thing, and they have now become a thing. And I think we need to step up as a city and change our municipal code to make those parks safe for folks because they are not feeling safe. I'm interested also in a bit of a yes and, so yes to option 3, and I really do like the education, especially like the education on the roadway. I had a dinner party a bit ago, and one of our neighbors came, and her son has an e-bike and got in an accident. Thankfully, I think it wasn't serious. It was like a fractured ankle or something, like something real but not serious. And she says, he just doesn't understand the rules of the road. He didn't understand, the way that traffic works, and so he wasn't paying attention in the way that he needs to be paying attention. So if we are going to say to these kids, and they are to anybody riding e-bikes, but mostly kids, that they can't be on the sidewalks, this would apply even if they were on the sidewalks, and we're going to have them on the road, that much more important that they understand road safety. So we'd love to see us also do education while we also consider changing our municipal code.
Thank you. Councilmember Wolf.
Thank you. I want to thank the subcommittee for the work that you put into this and for the staff for the time spent on this. As our speakers mentioned, and thank you, Emily, for coming out, and thank you for coming out. This is one of the biggest issues dealing with in the city. It's a new issue, so there's not existing framework, so we're in uncharted territory, and so it gets complicated. But I'm really happy that we're bringing this forward tonight to take the first step. And I do say this is the first step because it's the easy part. Regarding the parks, I'm easy with option 3. They should be banned in parks. There should be no place for e-bikes. Like Councilmember Anstead said, our parks are relatively small, and there's no need for them. So that's what I want to go forward with. On the sidewalks, it gets a little bit more complicated. I will be supporting option 3, but I do want to comment that it gets confusing and complex because there are areas in the city where it might not be safe when a kid's going to school, and so there might need to be a little bit of flexibility there for sidewalks. But I do think Councilmember Anstead said it also, that we have put a lot of money and time into our bike lanes, and so we have world-class bike lanes throughout the city that need to be used. So I will be comfortable moving forward with option 3 for both parks and the sidewalks. But this is the easy part. How do we enforce it is going to be the hard part. There's a lot of issues going on. Lost Hills is a huge service area from Chatsworth to Malibu to Calabasas to Westlake Village. And we need to come up with creative solutions to work with our law enforcement to be able to enforce this. Because there's a lot of other things going on. And I think that it's important that we are putting in, I guess, the strictest options possible to give us more tools in our tool belt to address this issue, so that we're coming in as prepared as possible. So with that, I thank the staff again for the work on this.
Thank you. And I would just like to say, having sat on the subcommittee, I obviously agree with number 3 in both. And I think enforcement is a problem, but so are the lives of our children. And somebody is going to get killed if we don't do something, because we've all seen kids, and especially, as you said, the education piece, because doing a wheelie down the center of T.O. Boulevard is not something that is safe. And so it's education, and I think if we take, children off the sidewalks into the bike lanes, they will learn the rules of the road, which I don't think they know now. And I think parents will be far more careful about giving them these e-bikes, knowing that they are going to be riding them only on the roads and in the bike lanes. And so that's my hope. And we'll work with the school districts to educate. Any money that we spend there is an investment in our community and in the safety of everybody. And especially when you have small children in the park or walking down the sidewalk, we don't want, heaven forbid, that one of them gets pushed into the road or something. That would be horrific. So we have to do something, because doing nothing doesn't work. We've all seen that. So something very hard has to come down until this all settles. So that's my comment. So thank you so much to the staff for everything you've done. Did you have a...
Can I add, just to answer your questions and comments as far as what's next? I see what's happening next is we're going to look and see what would those ordinance or the code changes be, and then further discussions with the sheriff's station and with our community development on how enforcement, what that framework might look like, going from fines to when do we call the sheriffs, what number, those types of details. And we hope to bring that back to you. I don't want to be overzealous, but in the near future.
Thank you. And I do have one last question. Volunteers on patrol. Do we have any now?
We do, yes, but it is one person right now. We do have a couple volunteers, though, that have been certified from, I believe, the Valley and Malibu, that are volunteering to come to our area and work with our new VOP. And we have one in the pipeline as well, and we're continuing to push that. And we'll work with them as well as our safety liaisons.
So maybe we could put out an appeal to our community. I'm looking at you. If you'd be interested in helping us, because the more, I think at the beginning too, the more enforcement we have right away, so that kids realize this is serious. So if we can put out an appeal to our community, if anybody would like to step up and volunteer to help patrol our parks that have been trained correctly. So we don't want vigilantes, but we want people that understand the codes and can help us enforce them. So have we given you enough direction? Oh, certainly.
I just got one quick question. If we were to pass option 3, the biggest question I have is, will we, and do we have to appropriate money to it? Like, one of the thing I can think of at the top of my head is, I would want an article in the Acorn, or not an article, an ad, in the Acorn from the city of Agoura Hills saying, attention, changes in e-bike requirements in the city, or whatever it is. No e-bikes on sidewalks, no e-bikes in local parks. Something like that. I mean, is that something that we've already thought about, or can you tell me whether that, what we need to do to make that happen for the cost of that in the news?
I think we need, that's a great comment, Councilmember Anstead. I think we have to add that to our list. I think we have to now go back and gather all the information of what it's going to take to implement something like that. So we have some research to do. Okay. We can add the ad to our list, and then I'm going to defer to City Manager Hamburger. Maybe it's during the budget, the mid-year review.
Let's take a look at what the enforcement, because the enforcement part of it is probably, and the education, we can probably do a lot of that within the existing budget. And if we find that we have to do a lot of ads or something a little bit outside of that, we'll bring that back to you. But I think we've got to look at a couple of enforcement options of how we can expand that, at least the front, and so what that cost will be, and we'll present that to you.
Okay, awesome. Thank you.
And we could also include it in the, I don't know how soon we will have all of this legally done, but in our, city brochure that goes out a couple times a year. That's a great place. We could put it on the front page.
Absolutely.
Thank you. All right. So now we're going back in order. So we go back to item number 10. Our next. No, it's just no vote. Yes, we've given them direction. So our next item is a discussion to introduce and waive full reading of ordinance number 25-480, adopting by reference the 2025 edition of the California Building Standards Code and the 2024 edition of the International Property Maintenance Code, amending Articles 3 and 8 of the Agoura Hills Municipal Code, approving a CEQA exemption determination, and setting a public hearing for November the 12th, 2025. I will now defer to Building Official Lucas Quash for the staff presentation.
Well, all right, well, good evening, everyone. Good evening, Madam Mayor and honorable members of the City Council. My name is Lucas Quach, and I serve as the City Building Official. I'm honored to be here tonight to present the adoption of the 2025 California Building Standard Codes Ordinance. So tonight's presentation will begin with an overview of the adoption process for the 2025 California Building Standards Code. We'll also be briefly examining how the new Assembly Bill 130 affects this adoption process. And next, we'll review the updates made by the state in the 2025 codes. After that, we'll discuss some highlights of the proposed amendments for the city of Agoura Hills. And finally, we'll conclude with next steps and recommendations. So every 3 years, the state adopts a new set of building codes known as the California Building Standards Code. The 2025 edition incorporates national model codes along with amendments from state agency following a multi-year adoption process. The California Building Standard Commission approved this latest edition in January of this year, and it was codified and published in early July. Local jurisdictions are required to adopt this edition of the state code for local enforcement by January 1st, 2026. Cities are allowed to make and adopt amendments to the state code, provided these amendments are supported by findings related to local climatic, geological, or topographical conditions. So for this local code adoption cycle, there's an additional requirement to consider. Assembly Bill 130, recently enacted, establishes a 6-year moratorium on new local amendments on residential building standards. However, there are some exceptions. Under AB 130, jurisdiction can still make residential code amendments if they meet one of the following conditions. That one, they are directly related to health and safety emergency standard, or they pertain to home hardening measures, or if they relate to energy efficiency, they must be aligned with an approved general plan and allow for mixed fuel residential construction. So new administrative amendments are also permitted, provided they result in a more streamlined and cost-efficient process. And perhaps the most beneficial exception for most cities is the provision that allows for the continuation of local amendments that were effective before September 30th, 2025. Now, this exception applies to the majority of the proposed amendments for the city this year. So before discussing the city proposed amendments, let's highlight some of the notable changes in the state 2025 codes. So a major change is the addition of the California Wildland Urban Interface Code, or WUI, just because it sounds nice, to the family of codes. This code consolidates the WUI standards in one place, aligning ignition-resistant construction provisions across both the building code and the residential code. So with the building code, in addition to the usual standard code language updates and the realignments of conflicting provisions, the 2025 edition incorporates new seismic and wind maps from ASC standards. It also clarifies accessibility requirements for multifamily housing in the CBC. The energy code continues to promote all electric readiness and the use of heat pump water heaters in both residential and commercial buildings. And CalGreen had expanded requirements for electric vehicle charging infrastructure. For example, it now mandates at least one EV receptacle per dwelling unit in the multifamily developments and stipulates that at least 25% of common use parking spaces must be equipped with EV chargers. That's an increase from the previous requirement of 10%. So for the local Agoura Hills amendment, most of the proposed changes are readoptions of the amendments from the 2022 code. A few new amendments are being introduced, ones pertaining to non-residential EV charging station. Two is the grading threshold exemption, and then there's the wildland urban interface transition from the building and residential code. So the proposed amendments are made with consideration for adhering to the limitations set by AB 130. So as previously mentioned, most of the amendments for this cycle reflect existing provisions that are currently in effect. These amendments include administrative changes related to permit expirations, application submittal requirements, refund procedures, and other operational processes. They also include structural provisions adopted last cycle, which pertain to the structural design of hillside structures, the prohibition of wood foundations, and the use of more robust seismic standards. Home safety provisions, such as seismic shutoff valves, voluntary seismic retrofit, and the Swimming Pool Safety Act are also proposed for readoption. Now, the new proposed amendment falls into three main categories. One is relating to the applicability of wildland urban interface, code. The second one is related to the permit exemption threshold for the grading provision in Appendix J. And then there's the requirement for EV charging infrastructure in CalGreen. So to begin with, staff proposes to carry forward the amendment currently found in the Building and Residential Code to implement the Wildland Urban Interface Standard citywide upon the adoption of the WUI Code. This would transfer the existing emission-resistant construction standards from the previous Chapter 7A in the CBC and Section R337 in the Residential Code to the new WUI Code. The amendment aims to provide consistent wildfire protection throughout the city of Agoura Hills. Second, staff proposes adopting Cal Green Tier 1 voluntary requirement as mandatory for non-residential projects in the city. This requirement is approximately 33% higher than the base code, reinforcing Agoura Hills' commitment to sustainability as outlined in the Climate Action and Adaptation Plan, also known as the CAP. And additionally, this aligns with the previous approach for the adoption of the REACH code. And thirdly, there's the proposed amendments to the administrative grading regulations aimed at creating clearer criteria for grading permit exemptions. These amendments establish objective standards for when permit exemption applies, specifically for earthwork involves less than 50 cubic yards and meets certain specified conditions. The goal of these changes is to ensure a consistency in the review of construction plans and to reduce ambiguity for applicants and ultimately making the permitting process more efficient and straightforward. So what's next? So staff will be focusing on informing and educating the public, including contractors, engineers, architects, builders, developers, and homeowners. Training material, information bulletins, guidelines, and the likes will be developed or updated to reflect the latest information and will be made available to the public online and at the counter. Staff will update the city website and MGO online permitting system to ensure smooth transition for applicants. So at this time, staff respectfully recommend that the City Council introduce and waive further reading of Ordinance Number 25-480 and set public hearing for the adoption of the ordinance for Wednesday, November 12, 2025. Once adopted, staff will file the ordinance with the Building Standard Commission along with the resolution, which include express finding as required by the state. The adopted codes, along with the amendment, will take effect on January 1st, 2026. This concludes staff's presentation. Staff is available to answer any question regarding proposed code adoption, logo amendments, or the implementation process. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Before we move on to public comment, does any council member have any questions of staff?
I just have
Yes.
one clarifying question. Excellent presentation, excellent report. This is super, super complicated, and you did an incredible job. This is back in the, I feel like I should understand this, but I don't quite understand it category. On page 4, it's about the WUI, by the way. Yeah, that is super cool, isn't it? Like we're going to have a WUI code. On page 4 of the report, it says in that paragraph that is the bolded California Wildland Urban Interface Code, it says this includes mandating the use of ignition-resistant building materials and construction methods for all new constructions, additions, alterations, and repairs of structures within the city. This reflects the city's desire to enforce the same construction standards throughout the city as it is required for the structures located in the VHFHSC, we should come up with a better name for that, without designating the entire city in this fire zone. Can you clarify that last sentence?
Okay, so there's maybe a few months back, so there's a new updated map by CAL FIRE, basically listing the area within the city where there's high fire, moderate fire, and very high fire. So there's different categories within the city. But as far as for the construction standards, it's a lot easier for us to apply the whole standard throughout the whole city so that it would protect everybody or the structure. And also, about 90, if memory serves me correctly, about 92% of the cities is already in the very high, in the very high or moderate zone already. So basically, we're capturing the 8% of the remaining to apply the WUI construction standard 2 also.
Okay, fantastic. So just to reflect back, and thank you, currently, as it exists, only 90% of the city that's in that acronym has to comply with this standard, and with this amendment, the whole city would then have to comply with it, regardless of whether they were designated within that acronym.
That is correct, and that has been the historical application of it.
Okay, fantastic. Thank you.
That's also because we know that the whole city's in the very high fire hazard severity zone, no matter what the map says. Thank you. Councilmember Wolf.
Regarding the automatic gas shutoff valves, if I'm reading this correctly, it says that requires installation for new construction, remodels in a greater than $10,000, and when the property is being sold. So anytime in the city of Agoura Hills that house is being sold from one owner to the other, they will now be required to install an automatic gas shutoff valve?
That is correct, and that was put in last cycle.
That is not new?
That's not new.
Okay, and that's something that's being done, is that from a state mandate or the city mandate?
No, that was an amendment that was put in place 3 years ago with the adoption of the code.
Okay, thank you.
So it begs the question, did they do it for your house when you bought it?
I will neither confirm nor deny.
But it's good that everybody out there knows now that if you're buying a house, it has to have the automatic gas valve shut off. Thank you. Okay, any other questions of staff? All right, we move on to the public hearing. Any comments?
We did not receive any written correspondence, nor do we have any speaker cards.
Thank you so much. Does any council member have any further questions? Are we ready to deliberate? Councilmember Anderson, may I start with you?
Yes, although it's my understanding that we're waiving the reading and that we're actually going to have the hearing on this on November 12th, so that perhaps we're not deliberating on it at this meeting?
Now, we have to have a vote on the staff recommendation.
Oh, okay. I think we should move forward with a public hearing and agendize this for November 12th.
Thank you. Councilmember Anstead.
Agree.
Councilmember Wolf.
I agree.
And I agree too. So we have a unanimous agreement. We don't need to have deliberations. So I will now call for a motion and a second to approve the staff recommendation, which is, get to the staff recommendation. Staff respectfully recommends the City Council introduce and waive further readings of Ordinance Number 25-480 and set the public hearing for the adoption of the ordinance for Wednesday, November the 12th, 2025.
City Councilman Chris Anstead so moves.
Councilmember Anderson seconds.
Thank you. I will now call on the City Clerk for the roll call vote.
Councilmember Anderson?
Aye.
Councilmember Anstead?
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Wolf?
Aye.
Mayor Sylvester?
Aye.
Mayor Sylvester, you have approval 4-0.
Thank you very much. We are now moving on. We've done the e-bikes, so we now move to action item number 12, a discussion to consider the approval of the City of Agoura Hills 2025 Wildfire Risk Assessment Report. Before we move on to public comment, does any council member have any questions? Oh, no. Are we going to discuss it? Or have we all read it?
There'll be a staff presentation.
Yeah, I don't see that.
My apologies. Yes, please defer to Deputy City Manager Salaya.
Okay, we'll now have the staff presentation.
Thank you. Good evening, Mayor Sylvester and members of the council. This evening, staff is pleased to present for your consideration the approval of the city's community wildfire risk assessment. With me this evening is a team from Jensen Hughes, Amelia Pluto, and David Kerr. So for this evening's presentation and provide a little guidance, we will be providing a quick overview of the initial process of the CWRA. I will then defer the Jensen Hughes team for their presentation. Staff will then return with a summary and recommendations, and of course, there will be time for questions. So as the City Council is aware, the city did receive grant funding to undertake the CWRA development. At your July 10th, 2025 meeting, the council approved an agreement with Jensen Hughes to prepare and develop the CWRA. In mid-August, city staff and the Jensen Hughes team held a kickoff meeting to set the timeline and to discuss the project phases. The Jensen team also started with research and gathering of hazard and risk assessment data, and that time was from about November through March of 2025. Also during this time, the Jensen Hughes team also engaged the core team, which consisted of city staff, LA County Fire, and agency stakeholder work group to review technical data. Jensen Hughes also conducted a site visit of the community in November of 2024, and as the City Council was aware, community outreach was also conducted, which consisted of a community survey as well as public workshops as noted in the report. At this time, I'm going to stop my portion of the presentation and defer to the Jensen Hughes team for their presentation on the CWRA.
Good evening, and thanks for having us here with you tonight. My name is David Kerr, and I was one of the staff members that worked on the development of the community wildfire risk assessment. So we'll give you a little bit of overview on it, some of our thoughts about it, and hopefully answer your questions. And I'll try to use WUI as often as I can in the presentation. The CWRA is kind of a unique creature. It's a portion of what will be later on a more robust and more elaborate community wildfire protection plan. But when we looked at when the city contacted us originally for the risk assessment, we looked at elements that affect the city that would drive wildfire hazard and risk here. We're coming up on the 7-year anniversary of the Woolsey fire in just a few days. So those of you who lived in the city at that time probably don't need any reminding of what the fire hazard risks are in the area. But you do live in a very fire-prone environment, and nature's not static, so the Woolsey fire burn, where it once was black, is regrowing, and it will become fire-prone again in a matter of time. So we don't live in static environments. And one thing that is static around here is our weather and climate system. Mediterranean climate, windy conditions, been very fortunate this fire season so far. Santa Ana winds really haven't surfaced, although I'm hearing there's a forecast potentially next week for some stronger offshore winds in the particular area. The layout of the city is very unique. You have a mix of a hard wildland urban interface where structures are immediately adjacent to wildland fuels, but you also have this intermix, more like the Chesborough Canyon area, where the structures are actually intermixed within the wildland fuels, and they're not actually a hard interface between those. And yes, the city is within, most of the city is within the very high fire danger severity zone. So those are the new CAL FIRE maps that have been adopted that identify those areas. Some of the key vulnerabilities, you have some fingers of fuels that lead fires right down into the community. So you think of Chesborough Canyon, you think of some of the locations off of Greystone where the fuels come right into the city, and even up behind Thousand Oaks High School where fuels come right down to the dirt parking area up above the school. So some unique areas there with undeveloped land. Some of the community was originally built before the original wildland fire building standards were developed. So you have older portions of the city that do not meet the current wildland urban interface building standards. And then unfortunately, the city of Agoura Hills tends to catch fires. You don't have a lot of ignitions that start within the administrative boundary of the city, but you have fires that start in the Simi Hills, off to the east of you, Chesborough Canyon area, and these fires tend to burn into the city. If there's any one good point when you look back at fire history for the city of Agoura Hills, there is no recorded history of a fire burning from the coastal side, from the Malibu side into the community. All your large and destructive fires have always come from the north or to the east of you. Oh, I'm sorry, I got So the overview of the CWRA, the analysis was done taking a look at winds, fuels, topography, and all the elements that tend to lead into wildfire behavior. And that wildfire behavior is what's classified, at least in this assessment, as a hazard. We also looked at the vulnerabilities and the exposures within the city. So what are the values that are at risk? Where are those values located? And how are those values exposed to the actual fire line intensity or the flame lengths that develop on certain fires. So some areas of the city are more exposed than other areas just based on their proximity to fuels or the type of construction that they might have. So the first step of the CWRA is basically what will become Chapter 4 of the greater Community Wildfire Protection Plan when that gets developed. So this feeds into the greater Community Wildfire Protection Plan. I'm going backwards here. I don't know. Okay, so let's talk about the process. Can somebody else drive this for me? All right. So this plan is community-based, the Community Wildfire Protection Plan, which will be the next phase. And from my understanding, funding has been secured for the development of the plan at this time. We're going to take what our bullet points 3 and 4 on this, which tends to be which are the elements of the risk assessments itself. But we're going to feed into the Community Wildfire Protection Plan as far as the roadmap to fire resiliency. So we look at things not only as hazard and risk, but we'll start looking at building elements. We'll start to define area-specific vegetation treatments potentially. We'll look at developing partnerships with homeowners associations, other land management agencies that manage wildland fuels that are your partners. And all those will go into building this greater Community Wildfire Protection Plan. And this is really going to be the mechanism that will lead to grant funding opportunities for the community in the future. So when work needs to get done, grant funders look for a fully developed Community Wildfire Protection Plan and the projects that are defined within those to fund those particular projects. So the risk assessment process, we started with a core group as was defined, but we also had a lot of cooperating agencies that came with this. So we had great participation from not only the Sheriff's Department, County Fire, National Park Service, the Conservancy, MRCA. They were all members within this core working group that came together. And then we built from the issues and concerns that this working group had, took that into public engagement through the mechanisms of a survey, and then actually the community outreach meetings, the 2 community outreach meetings that were conducted to support this particular plan. So it started, seems like forever ago sometimes in my mind, but it wasn't that long ago. But here we are, we finally made it to the last bubble. The work is done, it's been vetted through staff, it's presented to the council tonight, hopefully for approval, but we're here to answer questions as far as what the final plan looks like and what it means for the community. So one of the key elements of the plan is how do you define hazard and risk? So providing clarity on those really feeds into the analysis that was done. So when we look at hazard from a fire behavior or a fire management standpoint, we want to know how severe is a fire and where are past and future fires likely to burn. So those are all scientific based modeling analysis that can be done to do that. But once you understand what the hazard is, well, how does that hazard interface with things like developed areas, natural resources that need to be protected? So what are the vulnerabilities that we're trying to protect from this particular hazard? So once we have developed the list of vulnerabilities, we take a look at the exposure of those vulnerabilities to the hazard. We tie that all together and we end up into the little area that summarizes as fire risk. So one of the main things that we had to do was, with the help of the working group, is start to identify where those particular vulnerabilities and exposures are. So we were able to, with spatial data, go ahead and map critical infrastructure, some of the community features, major road systems, and lay those out on the map so we had a spatial understanding on where the particular vulnerabilities of the community of Agoura Hills actually is. And then from there, we were able to take a look at some of the fire things that have happened in the past, and understanding that past fire activity helps to inform where future fire activity might go. So fire history data goes back, it's well documented back into the 1970s. So we looked at more than 50 years worth of fire history. Ignition density, where are the fires that actually start around Agoura Hills? Those we were able to trace back with a good quality data back to 1992, and I believe the data set ended in 2021 for the data set we used there. And then using that fire history and ignition density, we modeled fires based on those ignition locations to come up with flame length, fire line intensity, fire frequency, where does a fire tend to like to burn, and then what are the major travel routes that wildfires tend to burn through. So this map here is basically a map of fire severity. So the brighter the color, the more reds and oranges are areas of higher fire severity. The cooler colors are areas of lower fire intensity. So when you do the modeling, and the modeling that we used was based on 97th percentile weather. So we were looking at the 3% worst winds, the 3% worst dry days, 3% of the worst fuel moistures that occur on the landscape. So those fed into the fire models, and we came up with a spatial representation of where fire hazard occurs on the landscape. And from this particular map, you can see that the Liberty Canyon area tends to light up pretty obviously as an area of particular concern. From that point, we take hazard and we look at, well, where do fires have a tendency to burn? So we took the ignition density data from 30 years, and we modeled fire from each one of those locations and overlaid those together to see where fires had a tendency to want to burn. And once again, the red are areas where spatially fire tends to like to burn, most frequency. So once again, you're looking at Liberty Canyon area, you're looking at areas in Chesborough, or you look at areas in the northwest of the community, has a much lower fire frequency as far as the spatial extent that fires like to burn with. And we took that same data and we overlaid it on your road systems to take a look at, well, where do fire flow paths like to intersect with your primary travel routes? And once again, we take a look at areas that most heavily impact your travel routes in Liberty Canyon, some areas off of Cornell leading out of the city, but basically the east side of the community is the one that has the greatest fire flow frequency. And that has to do a little bit with the influence of Las Virgenes Canyon. Las Virgenes Canyon is a major fire flow path, tends to take fires from the inland area and run them into Malibu. And there's just a history of wildfires burning through that canyon area. So that's one of the areas that locally tends to be most affected by wildfire. So there's ways to look at risk that meet hopefully the needs of everyone that's involved in this particular process. The larger graphic there takes a look at comprehensive risk. So we take fire frequency and we take fire hazard and then we balance it with the exposures at risk. So those exposures that were identified early on and spatially mapped out We lay those over the maps with the fire frequency and the fire hazard to come up with a risk value. And risk is just measured from higher to lower. So just because you have a green color doesn't mean that there is no risk. It just means you have lower risk than some of the other areas that were mapped. And once again, Liberty Canyon tends to look out there. And this is the whole community, all the community assets. The graphic on the upper right takes a look at natural resource values. So with the help of MRCA and the Conservancy, National Park Service, one of their main goals is the protection of natural resources. So we wanted to provide those cooperators with some sort of look that said, well, if your true interest of area isn't necessarily structures and infrastructure, but the protection of natural resources, what areas might be most effective? And it's that area on the south side of Agoura Road leading up Ladyface Ridge are the ones that, from a strict natural resources standpoint, those are the areas that are most at risk. And then from an economic standpoint, housing, business locations, we took these same exposures and values, laid them over with risk and hazard, and came up with a different way to look at risk across the city. So. Depending on what you're most interested in, there's ways to look at risk that focus more on the values that you're most concerned with. And these are just some of the areas that we took a look at on our field trip with Chief Smith, your fire chief for the city. We have areas in the upper left where there's actually high-density fuel vegetation associated with a city-owned park, Forest Cove Park. Obviously, hey, you have fingers of wildland fuels that come into the city from the north. Areas in Chesborough where you have limited access as far as road systems, poorly maintained road systems for getting fire equipment in, but also getting people out. Areas where are overgrown with fuels, where defensible space is lacking along the structures within the community. And then obviously there's large areas of open space, particularly on the north side of or on the south side of the community, south of Agoura Road. So public engagement is always a vital part. We don't live in Agoura Hills, so it's always important to understand what's important to those that do live in the community. So the public survey was released. 381 respondents to the public survey, which is actually a pretty stellar response based on what other communities have provided us in the past. So you have a community that's engaged in wildfire. They're concerned. They have particular areas of interest. Some of them that we just pulled out of there were insurance accessibility and cost. That's a difficult one. Just because you have a plan doesn't mean that you're going to be able to convince the insurance agencies that they need to insure community members that live adjacent to these wildland fuels. Home hardening cost and enforcement. How do we actually afford to do the home hardening on these non-WUI compliant homes? More information about fuels and fuels management, vegetation management, particularly along road systems. And then concerned over evacuation routes. And I understand that the city is currently going through an evacuation analysis process right now. I guess other areas from the workshop that came out is being able to advertise through webinars and seminars to get fire information out to the community. So while we had 381 respondents to the survey, we probably had less than 30 people show up to the public workshop. So how do you share this information out to the greater community so that they're aware of what wildfire risk looks like spatially along their particular area of interest? How do we provide that information properly? Is with materials for contracting for home hardening? Is that something that goes on the city website with vendor approved listings on that particular site that have capabilities and proven work histories to do that type of work? And then is there a need for door-to-door campaigns? And the Agoura Hills Fire Safe Council has done an amazing amount of work with the homeowners associations in particular to develop fire-wise communities throughout Agoura Hills. But Peter taking this information out to smaller groups to get buy-in, to get work done on the ground, which is really the key for providing a more resilient community. From the broader stakeholders, and this was part of things that came from the working group, availability of funding. Well, how do we get this work done if we don't have the money? And that's where grant funding comes in, and that's where the next step of getting a finalized and approved community wildfire protection plan is so important. Ideas of interagency cooperation. How do we align the needs and desires of Los Angeles County Fire with the needs and desires of MRCA or the needs and desires of the National Park Service? They have different missions. They're different agencies with different missions that they work towards. The feasibility of enforcement of defensible space, and I know it's coming down the road, but there's going to be a Zone 0 requirement being phased in over the next 3 years, I believe, for existing construction, but it will apply to all new construction. So that ember-resistant 0 to 5 foot zone around your homes. How does that get enforced? And how do we educate the public on what they need to be doing around their particular structures? And then finally, the egress and evacuation challenges that happen in the community. And that was really one of the bigger things that we heard at the community meetings was egress and how do we inform people and how do we move traffic in and out of the community. They came up with some ways and, increase community initiatives. How you do that, how you build community engagement is always a difficult issue. There are people that are always engaged in wildland fire issues, and there are people that have busy, complex lives that, expect a wildland fire truck or a fire department to be at their doorstep in a wildland fire. But how do you build that community incentive to do work yourself? And then provide the correct guidance to individuals regarding evacuations. Is there a need to go through and post evacuation zones? I know on the website there's a Know Your Zone evacuation push so that all the public understands where they're located. But how do you handle this with visitors to the city? How do you deal with this with people that are staying in the hotels? How do they understand what this means for leaving the community in the event of a wildfire? So the CWRA, the risk assessment, has multiple recommendations. We just grabbed a few out of these. They're organized within the plan under, I believe, 11 different headings. So they're more high level, not spatially specific. That will come with the Community Wildfire Protection Plan where things will be defined spatially and provided as specific projects with specific treatment standards, specific recommendations. But the risk assessment itself is organized into 11 different categories. And these are just some of the highlights from the recommendations. So develop public education plan to increase awareness and maintain defensible space. Your Fire Safe Councils, both the Santa Monica Mountains Fire Safe Council and the local Agoura Hills Fire Safe Council have been doing excellent work. They make themselves available for home inspections, but how do we get that information out to the greater public so that they use this available set of skills to take a look at their individual properties? Identify and provide recommendations for mitigating common ignition sources. So are there opportunities to work with agencies like Caltrans to do things along the 101 freeway, which is one of your major ignition corridors here locally? Do we need to work with National Park Service and MRCA along Chesbrough Canyon Road? Do we need to do more hazard reduction along trailhead parking areas? And I know you talked earlier about closing trail systems during red flag warning time. So are those ways that we can get out there, be proactively to reduce the number of ignitions that might impact the city? How do we fund people that are interested in removing hazardous trees from their property? Removal of trees is a costly endeavor. And unfortunately, many residents, particularly on the eastern side of the community, have large amounts of trees that really don't meet defensible space standards per the state of California. But how do they fund removal of large pine trees, large eucalyptus trees from those particular properties? It's thousands of dollars to remove that particular species of tree. So are there grant opportunities out there that might support that type of work? So the continuing education of the residents regarding defensible space features, does that need to be something that goes beyond what the Fire Safe Council does? And does that need to be something that's undertaken by the greater city as far as their operations? Managing vegetation along the major egress routes. Some of those are going to be Caltrans, some of those might be the county, some of them might be private roads. When you get up into the Chesborough area, there's actually private roads that have very poor access leading into some of the communities up in there. The design and the maintenance of a current emergency management communication system. I wasn't here during the Woolsey fire, but my understanding is that communications become sporadic. You lose some of the cell towers around here locally, and suddenly that cellular communications that we count on normally isn't there. So how do we continue to inform the public, get information out to them? Do we need to build redundancy in those communication systems in order to provide greater protection to the community? And so here's posting LA County pre-identified evacuation zones. Do we need to show those along some of the public transportation routes? So when somebody tells you that AH8 is under an evacuation order, do people actually know that they live in AH8? So where does that spatially exist on the ground? Is it a good idea to post that on there, or are we simply going to add to confusion? I have a tsunami warning sign in my neighborhood. I'm not really sure what it's pointing me to go, but I think I'm supposed to drive away from the ocean. So ensure the public education material on wildland preparedness and planning. The response is accessible. It is a bilingual community. Or everything that we're doing, is it accessible for Spanish speakers in the area? Or is there another language that we need to look expanding that material into that would be appropriate for the city of Agoura Hills? Continue to support the grassroots efforts. It's probably two of the more active fire safe councils that I've encountered doing this work, between the Agoura Hills folks and the folks with the Conservancy. So you have two very active groups, but are there ways to expand that more ways to engage those that within the HOAs might want to get classified as a Firewise community with the potential of reducing some of their insurance costs? And one of the things that kind of stuck out with myself and Chief Smith when we were driving around was some of the areas with really poor access, one-lane road, parking occurring on the roadsides that would limit the access of larger fire equipment. Do we need to consider doing things like having a parking restriction during red flag warning time? So when you think of closing trails, do you also want to think about considering parking restrictions on some areas where access is extremely difficult in the community?
Thank you. Thank you, Dave. So as the council sees, the presentation was very extensive, and the report is extensive, and there's a lot of items to think about as we go into the next phase. You saw those are just a sample of some of the recommendations, and this evening the council is not being asked to prioritize those. That will be part of the next phase. So as you saw, there's several steps that need to occur in the next phase, which would be the development of a community wildfire protection plan. This evening, completion and approval of the CWA this evening will, as you see there, will demonstrate the proactive leadership of the City Council's commitment to safety and resilience in this area. It provides a data-driven foundation for future land use, code enforcement, and policy decisions related to this subject matter. The CWRA also addresses constituency concerns and responses to insurance challenges, issues such as defensible space and evacuation safety. The CWRA will also potentially, as we noted before, it will unlock future state and funding, grant funding that will be available related to wildfire mitigation grants. And then also the CWRA offers a science-based framework to support future land use and mitigation decisions. So also finally, as the council was made aware earlier, and I just kind of want to reiterate, as the council is aware and for this public's knowledge, the city has already secured grant funding to begin the development of the CWPP. And initial discussions on the project have already begun with the consultant. So at this time, City staff is going to respectfully recommend that the City Council approve the 2025 Agoura Hills Community Wildfire Risk Assessment Report. This concludes the staff and Jensen Hughes presentation, and we're available for any questions that you may have.
Thank you so much for that presentation, and I also appreciate that you gave us the report early. I know I had it printed out because I couldn't absorb all that on my iPad. So there was a lot to take in, but I just want to let the public know this is only step one, and this is the initial step that we had to take before we could move on to the next step, which is the CWPP, which is the one that's really going to get the meat and give us a chance to plan and provide for our residents and our city going forward. So this is just the first step we had to take so that we can then qualify for the next step. And I just want everyone to understand that. And so moving forward this evening, nothing is final. We're just getting ready to really sink our teeth in to the next round. That being said, does any council member have any questions of staff?
Just a couple, and truly just a couple. And this is phenomenal. Thank you. It is a real treasure for us to be able to have that. You mentioned that part of the input that you got was door-to-door campaigns. I'm curious, did anyone say any more about what those door-to-door campaigns would look like? Have you seen those in other places?
I don't believe we got any additional detail from whoever suggested that. I think it came from a place of ways to reach individuals and residents who aren't coming to workshops or public hearings or things like that. But certainly something we can, we're not doing a door-to-door campaign as part of the CWPP, I don't think, but something to explore further as a recommendation to include.
And I know that Peter with the Agoura Fire Safe Council does a lot of face-to-face contacts, and Peter's been an invaluable resource for us for gathering community information. So we rely on Peter heavily. His assessments of the wildfire community and his outreach to the public is super helpful for us.
Terrific. Okay, and then just one more. There was something that really, and there is so much in here, and I too had it printed. Thank you, Michelle, because I am also incapable of fully digesting all of this stuff, and I appreciate having it in a binder. So there is a lot in here, and I know that as we go forward and develop the CWPP, I did that right, didn't I? As we go forward and develop the CWPP, I'm sure more questions will arise. But one thing that just caught my attention that I was curious about now is you talk about the Woolsey fire on page 68. You talk, in addition to some of these high hazard neighborhoods, even communities that are more remote, it's that last paragraph. And you say, they're still vulnerable to wildfires due to embers that can be carried large distances from the fire front, landing and igniting receptive fuel beds on and immediately surrounding a structure, as seen during the 2018 Woolsey fire. And I confess, I wasn't aware of that being something that happened during the 2018 Woolsey fire. So can you say more about what that was?
Sure. In conversations with Chief Smith, he was here during the Woolsey fire. Obviously, when you have winds that were associated with Woolsey, we went and looked. There were gusts of winds at that Chesborough weather station of greater than 60 miles an hour. So you're moving massive amounts of embers into the community. So whether they were small fires, just small spot fires that went out on their own in somebody's yard on their property, or whether it was involved in their roof, it blew embers into vents, it caught in material that was found in rain gutters. All those contributed to additional ignitions ahead of the main fire front itself. So you have the main fire itself, but then you have small fires propagating out ahead of that fire. Some associated with wildland vegetation, some of it associated with private property defensible space areas, some of it in ornamental vegetation. And the mountain fire recently in Camarillo is an excellent example of ornamental vegetation next to structures that led to damage and destruction of structures itself. it's a nice kind of teaching tool for the community as far as what ornamental vegetation has the potential to do.
I'll be talking about that a little later. Any other council members?
Yes, thank you. For the study, as you know, Agoura Hills is really unique in the sense that we're a gateway to a lot of communities, both in the north and the south. Were the unincorporated Ventura County and LA County communities, was any of that viewed in the study?
Yeah, I can start us off there. Yes, so in short, all of the hazard and risk analysis that David shared, we used the city boundaries and then did a buffer of, I believe, 5 miles around that to take into consideration kind of the impact that all of that area has on the city and vice versa. So we did extend that out.
So it was a 5-mile buffer. Okay, thank you very much.
Any other questions of staff before we move on? Okay, so we are now going to move on to public comments. Jay, thank you for being so patient. I'll defer to the city clerk.
Thank you. We did receive written public comments from Jay Crutcher, Agoura Hills, and Mary Weisbrock, Agoura Hills, representing Save Open Space. Those were distributed. They will be part of the record. And we do have a speaker this evening, Jay Crutcher.
Welcome. You have 3 minutes.
Madam Mayor, thank you for the opportunity to speak tonight. I wasn't planning on talking about the favorite acronym WUI, but I did want to talk about urgency and engagement. There's a fuzzy line between urgency and panic, and often that depends on how the listener hears it. And I want to stress that I'm speaking tonight with a sense of urgency and not panic about the Community Wildfire Risk Assessment and the forthcoming Community Wildfire Protection Plan. There is a lot of work to do, and it needs to be done with urgency. In spite of recent rain, Agoura is still at significant risk of wildfire. The live fuel moisture levels in our area are lower, meaning drier and riskier than they were last year at this time, and right at the critical level set by LA County Fire. The California wildfire forecast shows that precipitation should be well below normal throughout January, temperatures well above normal, and therefore we are at above normal risk for significant fire potential. 88% of LA County is in a severe drought. And that's just this year. The long-term climate trend is worse. I'm sure our mayor's files include studies written by Dr. Daniel Swain showing that we should expect drier droughts and stronger Santa Anas, amplifying our wildfire risk. Tonight's CWRA is a conclusion of efforts started almost 2 years ago, and is the first of 2 related reports, as we've discussed, the next being a Community Wildfire Protection Plan. Oddly, tonight's CWRA executive summary states that the development process for the CWPP is anticipated to begin upon completion of the CWRA in September of 2025. Grant funding for the next phase has been earmarked and available since April. 371 people responded to a survey designed to understand our residents and their lived experience. 37% say they live in a community with only one way in and out, while the city's traffic consultant, Kimberly Horn, suggests it's less than 2%. And that shows a huge gap in awareness and planning, but it's something we can fix. 44% do not feel prepared for a wildfire today. 43% said they were not given sufficient information during January's Kenneth Fire on how, when, or where to go. One respondent wrote, "Streetlights were out and no services directing traffic. Traffic on Thousand Oaks Boulevard and Canaan was terrible." 63% are not aware of LA Alert. Of the socially vulnerable who said they need help to evacuate, 46 don't have a plan for how to get that help. 84% were not aware of free home ignition zone evaluation programs or the city's home hardening grants. And this from people who are aware enough to see and complete the survey. We can and must do better. We need to reach out and involve more people, make our community's safety a real priority. As you approve the CWRA tonight, please demand that we start timely work on the next phase with communication, outreach, collaboration, and urgency. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Do we have any other speakers?
We do not.
Okay. Does any other council member have further questions? No? So we'll move on to deliberations. Who would like, anybody want to start? Council Member Anstead.
First, I want to thank you very much for a comprehensive presentation tonight and also comprehensive report. I think it's great. Also, the fact that we got great public input, I think is a really important thing to have for our community. Wildfires, as someone that lived through it right after being elected to the city council and driving through the flames early in the morning on the first day of the fire, I can tell you it's a very serious thing if you did not live here during the Woolsey fire. So, I mean, I take this very seriously. I think the recommendations that I read, I think all of them that we need to try to adopt, whether it's fuel mitigation, home hardening, which we're already doing. We're trying to give grants to residents to be able to do that. But I look forward to the next stage of the process with the CWPP, but this is a great first step, and I'm ready to move forward. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Wolf?
It was a really fascinating document and presentation. I feel that it's so important that we have this data and that we're armed with this information and these historical records and these historical trends. With this type of data, we can better prepare. But as was mentioned by the speaker, it's really important that we have all this data, but we need to make sure we act on it. So I'm absolutely able to move forward tonight with the recommendations and approve this and move on to the next step. But we need to act with urgency because these are just words on paper, but it's an incredible first step. And I think we're in a really good position, and we're showing how important this is to our residents and to the region, because this is an existential threat facing our city. It's not if, it's when. And to hear that the Santa Ana winds are kicking up next week sent chills down my spine. So this is more important than ever, and it's a good first step, like mentioned, so we can move on to CWPP, and we can aggressively be looking for funding and aggressively implement these recommendations. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
So I echo Councilmember Anstead and Mayor Pro Tem Wolf's comments. Sends a chill down my spine is a great way to describe it. I'm going to start with something happy, which is I love that we got a pretty stellar response, and that's no accident. It's because we have a phenomenal communications team here in Agoura Hills, and we also have a phenomenal community. Yes, we absolutely need more engagement and need to do more, and I'm super proud of us for that. I really appreciate this, as you said, and as it's in the data-driven decision-making that will then set us up for the grant funding that we are going to need to have in order to be able to implement some of these 33 recommendations, prioritize these recommendations. I'm really interested in them. I sat there circling and highlighting and thinking, okay, which ones of these are low-hanging fruit? Which ones of these are things that are going to be expensive? Which ones of these are really high priority that we need to do? We won't be able to do all 33 at once, so there is going to have to be a really thoughtful process about how that CWPP comes together. And so thinking about that, I'll just be honest, I personally want to roll up my sleeves and be a part of helping be strategic in that. I believe that it is really important for us, the community, to be there with Jensen Hughes and the phenomenal staff that have already been doing this. And so I understand from a conversation with City Manager Hamburger, who always takes my calls on Tuesdays, super appreciate, that we develop ad hoc committees. We can develop ad hoc committees in the city when there is something here I wrote it down, when we have a distinct issue and that is time limited. So I would like to ask City Manager Hamburger, as we are thinking about our committees next year, to consider an ad hoc committee specifically for the purposes of working with Jensen Hughes and the staff and stakeholders to develop that CWPP. And absolutely delighted to go forward with this, approving this tonight.
Thank you so much. I think that's already covered in our safety committee. It's part of their jurisdiction, correct?
Currently, it would be under the Fire Response and Emergency Services Subcommittee, but
Yes.
you could develop an ad hoc So maybe that's to the liking of the council.
Right, so we can look at that. I would like to thank Jay for being here tonight. I know you have been riding hard on this, and I appreciate that, because this is a very dangerous situation in our city. I think we all recognize that. We all live here. We've all had to evacuate. We know what it's like, and we need to find ways to improve all of that. And I know you said you considered this a great survey response. To me, I'm just so sad that so few people in our city responded to that survey, because to me, we've got almost 20,000 people in this city. So at least 10,000 of those have to be adults, I would hope. And so under 400 people. It's pathetic. And then everybody says that they're so concerned, but they don't participate. And they don't, we've been talking about home hardening ever since I took a seat on the council. Every year we talk about it. And then I talk to people in the street and they look blank when I said, well, have you done your home hardening yet? They're not paying attention until the fire is coming over the hill, and then they're upset that we haven't done something. We can only do something as a full community. So I'm appealing to everybody in our community, get involved. When we go to the next phase, get involved. Make sure you're doing what you can, because when the next fire comes, as we have seen in the Palisades, as we saw in the Eaton fire in Altadena, we're on our own. There aren't enough fire resources in the state if there are multiple fires burning simultaneously. So we have to do as much as we can to prepare, and that's why this next phase is going to be so important. So, sorry to preach, but we've got to do more. So I'm talking to our community, we all have to do more. So I'm really happy we've done this, what I consider the first minute step. We've got to start running. And I hope that's what the CWPP does for our city and all our residents. And not just Agoura, but for residents in Oak Park and in the outlying areas around our city. Because we are one community and we have to act like that. So that being said, I will now call for a motion and a second to approve the staff recommendation, which is to approve the 2025 Agoura Hills Community Wildfire Risk Assessment Report.
Mayor Pro Tem Wolf, I'll make a motion.
Councilmember Anderson seconds.
Can we have a roll call?
Councilmember Anderson?
Aye.
Councilmember Anstad?
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Wolf?
Aye.
Mayor Sylvester?
Aye.
Mayor Sylvester, you have approval 4-0.
Thank you so much. So, moving on to the end of the evening, are there any comments from staff? Any announcements? Are there any comments from the City Council?
I do have a comment. Yes. I want to wish our fearless leader a very happy birthday. The mayor had a birthday this week, so happy birthday. Thank you for all you do for the city, and I hope you had a wonderful day.
Thank you. I had a lovely day celebrating with my granddaughter. I loved saying that. So any other comments from City Council? I do have one update I'd like to give you, and that's to do with the Zone Zero, the Forestry Committee that's meeting actually tomorrow. Anybody wants to join me on Zoom? It'll be on all day. I'm glad to report that they have now come up with 4 options for vegetation, and option number 4 says allow well-maintained plants, allow plants in pots and other vegetation in Zone 0, prohibits dead or dying plants, needles, leaves, weeds, and combustible mulches, all of which we agree with. So the city, Jeff Gorell and the supervisors in Ventura County took a vote and unanimously supported this new measure. And as you know, the LA City Council also took a stand to support this option. And also the other option for trees, which we're hoping will be chosen, is to allow well-maintained trees. Again, branches must be 10 feet from chimneys. So it just gives more flexibility to our local agencies. And I hope that these are the options that they will eventually adopt. We don't know yet, but at least they are considering our point of view now. So That's very helpful, I think. And don't worry, Jay, we're all for all the other home hardening ideas. It's just we want to have more flexibility with the vegetation. So, oh yes, Ramiro.
Sorry, hello. Okay, so there is one thing that I would like to announce. November 6th, the City of Agoura Hills community, far and wide, what are you doing? You're coming to the State of the City 2025. We're going to mention that right now because we realize we don't have another council meeting coming up before the actual date. So it's going to be an exciting time. We have been known to have award-winning State of the Cities, and so this is going to be no different. It's going to be an exciting time. Mayor Sylvester has her Mayor's Art Show that's going to be there featuring artists with disabilities. We also have a theme that I'm going to go ahead and keep under wraps right now, but I promise you it's going to be something you will not want to miss. So November 6th, over at our Recreation and Events Center, doors open at 5 p.m. You can come on in. There's going to be amazing food provided by Malibu Brewing Company. We've got amazing entertainment lined up. We've got our amazing mayor who's going to say something, all of our council members who are going to have an amazing time. We look forward to meeting and seeing all the great residents of Agoura Hills. Bring all your family and friends. And yeah, it's going to be, I promise this to be a great time. So State of the City 2025, November 6th.
Thank you so much. And Amy, what about One City, One Book? Is that, we should alert.
We alert, and we actually, thank you, Mayor Sylvester. We announced it at the last council meeting, but I will mention again that the following Thursday, November 13th at 6 o'clock, we are hosting Nita Prose, author of The Maid and The Maid's Secret. You do need to RSVP in advance for that to get a seat, so we encourage residents to go online and sign up. So, and thank you to the Agoura Hills Friends of the Library for their support. We would not be able to bring Nita Prose to Agoura Hills without them. So, Thursday, November 13th.
Thank you so much. So with that, the next regular City Council meeting is scheduled for 6 p.m. on November the 12th, 2025, in the Council Chambers of the Civic Center, located at 30001 Ladyface Court, Agoura Hills, California. This meeting is now adjourned.